Have you ever wondered if the story you know about Nebuchadnezzar truly reflects the whole truth? What if I told you that his transformation into a beast was not merely a punishment, but a spiritual revelation hidden in the shadows of the book of Daniel? Leave us your comment. Do you believe that God still speaks today through humiliations? Have you ever felt reduced to dust, only to discover that you were being redirected toward heaven? Today, we will unearth a mystery that has been hidden in plain sight in the scriptures, a story that transcends the boundaries of divine judgment and could forever change the way you understand God's power over kingdoms and over the human soul. Throughout time, the story of Nebuchadnezzar has been told as a warning, a lesson about pride punished by the Most High. However, beneath the surface of the biblical account, there is a deeper echo, a cryptic message that not only reveals God's sovereignty over kings, but also the divine design for inner transformation. Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the one who conquered Jerusalem, tore down the temple and led the Hebrew people into exile, became a symbol of absolute power. But even the most powerful man in the ancient world could not resist the will of the Eternal. Was it merely a temporary madness, or is there a prophecy hidden in his descent into an animal state? The account is found in chapter 4 of the book of Daniel. Here, Nebuchadnezzar himself narrates his experience, as if the Spirit had allowed the oppressor to have the final word, not to justify his glory, but to reveal God's glory in his fall. I, Nebuchadnezzar, was at ease in my house and flourishing in my palace. Daniel 4:4. But that flourishing would be short-lived. A dream, disturbing like a shadow creeping across the walls of the soul, awakened him. A vision of a gigantic tree, visible to the ends of the earth, home to the beasts and sustenance for all living things. That tree was cut down. Only the stump remained, bound with chains of iron and bronze. A heavenly messenger, a watcher, according to the original Aramaic text, Ir-Vekadish, descended from heaven and decreed judgment. Who was this watcher? An angel, a celestial witness, an echo of those who observe and record the actions of men from the heavens. Daniel, the exiled but undefeated prophet, interprets the dream with fear and trembling. The tree is you, O king. You have grown and risen to touch the heavens, but your heart has been filled with pride. Therefore, you will be cut down, expelled from among men. You will dwell with the beasts, eat grass like the oxen, and the dew of heaven will drench you. Your human heart will be taken from you, and you will be given the heart of a beast. For 7 times, 7 years, 7 prophetic cycles, you will wander as a wild creature. Here, the language becomes symbolic, almost apocalyptic. Why would God use such a radical image to humble a king? And why preserve this account in such detail in the scriptures? Jewish sages saw in this transformation a divine judgment for the sin of pride, the oldest of sins, the one that turned Lucifer into Satan. The Midrash compares Nebuchadnezzar's fall to that of the angels who disobeyed in the days of Enoch. In both cases, the result was degradation, a fall from a state of glory to a lower form of existence. According to some commentators, the fact that Nebuchadnezzar received a heart of a beast does not simply mean he lost his reason, but that he was invaded by a lower spiritual force, a degraded consciousness, as if his soul had descended to a bestial plane of existence. The Aramaic word used in Daniel 4:16 for beast is behemoth, which is also used in Genesis to refer to the animals of the field. But in a prophetic context, this word carries a spiritual weight. It represents the irrational, the instinctive, that which does not glorify God. In other words, Nebuchadnezzar did not just lose his throne, he lost his divine reflection. He was stripped of the spiritual image that every human carries, becoming a symbol of what man is without God, a creature that breathes, walks, and eats, but without eternal purpose. But this is where the mystery deepens even further. Why did God allow this king, enemy of Israel, destroyer of the temple, to have a chance at redemption? Why not destroy him as he did with Pharaoh? What is it about Nebuchadnezzar's story that sets him apart from other biblical tyrants? Some ancient scholars like Origen and Augustine saw in this passage a foreshadowing of grace, an echo of God's plan to reach even those who seem furthest from him. Because at the end of the 7 times, Nebuchadnezzar lifted his eyes to heaven. This phrase, so brief yet so charged with power, marks the turning point. It was not his mind that returned first. It was not his body that was healed. It was his gaze. It was his recognition. It was his worship. But at the end of that time, I, Nebuchadnezzar, raised my eyes to heaven, and my reason was restored to me. Daniel 4:34. It is as if heaven had been waiting for that gesture. It was not enough for the time to pass. The king's heart had to be broken. He had to recognize that there is a kingdom above all kingdoms, and that the Most High gives power to whomever he wills, even to the most unworthy. This declaration is not just theological. It is profoundly spiritual. It is a confession. It is a surrender. And in pronouncing it, Nebuchadnezzar reclaimed his humanity. Is this not the divine pattern? That brokenness precedes restoration. That humiliation is not the end, but the threshold to a higher understanding of truth. The story of Nebuchadnezzar, then, is not just a judgment. It is a transformation. It is a mirror for all who have ever believed they are in control, that their success is the fruit of their power, that their destiny is in their hands. It is a spiritual warning that pierces through the centuries and confronts us today. What part of us still lives as a beast? What areas of our lives are governed by pride, by instinct, by disconnection from the sacred? And how many times have we had to lose everything to lift our eyes again? The message of Daniel 4 is not just for kings. It is for everyone, because we all carry within us a throne that needs to be surrendered. We all face moments when God, out of love, allows us to be reduced so that we may see, so that we may remember that we are not gods, but creatures in need of the breath of the Spirit. And it is here that the story becomes a treasure, a golden thread hidden in the pages of the Old Testament, a thread that connects Nebuchadnezzar to all those who have been overcome by pride and restored by grace. And it is precisely in that restoration where the greatest of divine paradoxes lies. God does not destroy Nebuchadnezzar in his pride, but brings him low, strips him bare, reduces him, only to later raise him beyond anything he had ever experienced. And he does so not on the throne of Babylon, but on the throne of understanding. Because true kingship is not that which is exercised over peoples and armies, but that which is born in the transformed soul, in the heart that has recognized its misery and seen the glory of God. For this reason, Nebuchadnezzar was not only restored to his throne, but was exalted spiritually. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and glorify the King of heaven. Daniel 4:37. These are not political words. They are the words of someone who was broken to the core and in that abyss discovered that only the eternal deserves worship. The mystery of his transformation has fascinated generations. Some scholars see in the account an early form of what modern psychology would call zoanthropy, a mental disorder in which a person believes they are an animal. But reducing this story to a clinical diagnosis would be to deny its prophetic and spiritual dimension. Because the scripture is not concerned with describing symptoms, but with revealing purposes. It does not matter whether Nebuchadnezzar ate grass literally or if his condition was symbolic. What matters is that in his humiliation, heaven spoke. The King of Kings was revealing something greater than a punishment, an eternal lesson about the human heart. In the background of this episode, a truth resonates that runs through the entire Bible. God opposes the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Proverbs 3:34, 1 Peter 5:5. This pattern appears again and again from Eden to Revelation. The fall of the angels, the expulsion of Adam, the confusion of Babel, the defeat of Pharaoh, all are expressions of the same spiritual principle. And Nebuchadnezzar becomes the living portrait of this heavenly dynamic. In him, we see the audacity of the man who rises, and the mercy of God who, instead of crushing him, rebuilds him through humiliation. But there is an even deeper layer in this account, one that touches the very roots of the spiritual conflict that runs through the scriptures. Babylon was not just a city, it was a system, a symbol of human pride, idolatry, and organized rebellion against the Most High. In Revelation, Babylon reappears as the great harlot, mother of the abominations of the earth, Revelation 17:5. And yet, in Daniel 4, that same symbol of rebellion is inhabited by a man who ends up acknowledging God. Is this perhaps a prophetic foreshadowing that even in the darkest places, the Spirit can work redemption? Can God manifest himself even in the systems that have denied him? The rabbis of the Talmud wondered whether Nebuchadnezzar could have genuinely repented. Some argued that his testimony was real, others considered it superficial, but what cannot be denied is that his story was included, preserved, and proclaimed in the scriptures, not as a political anecdote, but as a spiritual testimony. It is as if heaven wanted to show that no heart is so hardened that it cannot be broken, and no throne so high that it cannot be transformed into an altar. This is a warning, but also a hope. Because all of us at some point find ourselves in that lonely field where we are no longer kings of anything, where we have been stripped bare, where we eat the grass of our decisions and endure the dew of the dark night of the soul. It is there that many lose faith, but it is also there that others lift their eyes. And when that happens, when the soul in ruins raises its gaze to heaven, something changes. The cycle reverses. What was broken begins to be restored. What was darkened begins to shine. This is why Nebuchadnezzar's message is so relevant today, because we live in a world that exalts self-sufficiency, image, and power. A world that builds modern Babylons with digital towers, thrones of ego, and systems that believe themselves eternal. And in the midst of all this, the eternal continues to call, sometimes with gentle words, other times with dreams, and at times with falls, with silences, with losses, with seasons where everything we thought we were is stripped away. And if we do not understand that divine language, we risk losing ourselves in an inner exile. But if we comprehend it, then even humiliation becomes redemption. Perhaps this is why this chapter was written in the first person, so that we might feel his voice, so that we might step into the skin of the king who thought himself invincible and ended up giving thanks for being reduced to nothing. Because only from the dust could he see the majesty of heaven. Only from madness could he discover true wisdom. Only from his dehumanization could he rediscover the divine image within him. And perhaps, just perhaps, this is the same path that the Spirit is tracing in our lives, in our generation, not to destroy us, but to transform us. And here is the final invitation. What part of your life needs to be surrendered? What secret pride still remains untouched? Are you willing to lift your eyes, even in the midst of the field of your ruin? The God who broke Nebuchadnezzar did not do so out of hatred, but out of love, to save his soul, to show his glory, so that all of Babylon would know that there is a throne higher than any human empire. What do you think about this mystery? Have you lived an experience where God had to break you to reveal his grace? We want to hear your reflection. Leave it in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and share this message with someone who needs to be reminded that even in the fall, God is working redemption.